trial against a man accused of crashing into a teen in downtown St. Louis, forever changing her life. Just moments ago, attorneys selected the jury in the trial against Daniel Riley. This is First Alert 4 at 6. I'm Samantha Jones. Corey has the evening off. Daniel Riley is accused of being behind the wheel when he crashed into a teenager who ended up losing her legs. First Alert 4, Susan O'Corey in that courtroom all day. She joins us now to tell us what comes next in this. Susan.
Well, Sam, it took a lot of time to get to this point, but just within the last hour, we saw lawyers finally make their pick on who are the 12 people who will be sitting on this jury. One thing of note here, though, they have 4 alternates. In a typical case, there's usually 2 alternate jurors. This time, though, they called in 4, just saying that because of the nature of this case, they want to make sure that they have enough should anything happen to anyone who is sitting on this jury. Now, they're being asked to be back here at the courthouse tomorrow morning. We're expecting opening statements to start, and then the judge saying, the lawyers tonight, have your witnesses ready. I'm expecting to take them witness after witness tomorrow. So a lot of things here that we're going to be continuing to follow. Now, cameras were not allowed inside for jury selection, but they will be allowed in for this case. Now, this is something that's been going on for almost a year. February 2023 is when Daniel Riley is accused of running a yield sign in downtown St. Louis, causing a crash that then had 17-year-old Janae Edmondson pinned under a car. Her injuries were so severe that she lost both of her legs. Now, this case made a lot of national headlines. It also led to changes here in the city. The driver, Riley, First Alert 4 learned he didn't have a driver's license. And on top of that, he also was out on bond in an armed robbery case. And we found he had violated that bond dozens of times. This case led to a lot of questions about former Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner and how she managed her office, and eventually led to her resignation. All of those things that the judge and lawyers on both sides were trying to figure out what the potential jurors knew about this, and if they knew a lot, if they knew about Daniel Riley's criminal history. We saw those jurors get disqualified. We did talk to a legal expert who is a defense lawyer and a former prosecutor about some of the things these jurors are being asked to do.
The whole entire process is to find 12 individuals who can promise to make their decision on whether or not Daniel Riley is guilty based on the facts that they hear in the courtroom, not the facts that the news have reported or things that they've seen on social media.
And the big message from the judge to the jurors tonight is that he doesn't want them looking up anything about this case. He doesn't want them reading into it. He wants them to be able to make their opinions based on what they hear in the courtroom. Again, those opening statements expected to start tomorrow morning. Cameras will be allowed inside, and we'll be here following what happens. In downtown St. Louis, Susan O'Corey, back to you.